Geometry. It can be Euclidean geometry or non-Euclidean geometry. We will focus on Euclidean geometry here. However, non-Euclidean geometry like Riemann geometry, differential geometry, you can think of as a model on the surface of a sphere. The lines are represented by the great circle. That's one of the non-Euclidean geometry. It's called elliptic geometry. Euclidean distance, Euclidean domain, Euclidean geometry, Euclidean space, ring, Euclidean topology, Euclidean essence. A straight line may be drawn from a point to another point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last 5 is parallel line, and that's the part that if it fulfills, it's called Euclidean geometry. If it's not fulfilled, the fifth parallel line, we call it non-Euclidean geometry. This is another hyperbolic geometry. It's kind of non-Euclidean geometry. A model in the interior of the circle. Line is represented by chord. It can also be modeled of a line on a saddle. And they are projective geometry. Projective plane. This is projected geometry, like this. Differential geometry, we have mentioned before. So you can see in general geometry, plane geometry, solid geometry, descriptive geometry, analytic geometry of a plane, analytic geometry of a space. That's three-dimensional. Projected geometry, differential geometry, integral geometry, algebra geometry, Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry. This is Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry. Euclidean element, the book, parallel action. If it is not fulfilled, it's called non-geometry, Euclidean geometry. So in the parallel line, that a point only can draw one parallel line. However, in non-Euclidean geometry, it can be none of a parallel line or at least two parallel lines. This is a parallel postulate. These are action for plane geometry based on motion. Definition of congruence and reflection. In analytic geometry, you use the coordinate to represent a figure. Non-Euclidean geometry, like I mentioned before, hyperbolic geometry. That is at least two parallel lines. And elliptic geometry is no parallel line. This is hyperbolic geometry. Elliptic geometry. These are non-Euclidean geometry. This is